which I am thrilled.
She met Larry Johnson.
And I recently wrote a grant for a program that we're hoping to have that deals with racial inequality in housing. And in the grant, I wrote something, it came into my head, and I thought, oh my gosh, first, I'm brilliant. Secondly, I have an opportunity to use them for you today to describe what this building does and why we are so pleased to once again partner with Veterans for Peace and bring peace learning into this building and peace awareness. And that is the essence of this building today. Landmark Center is a place to learn, to listen, and to be heard. And nothing embodies that more than you sitting here today. So I thank you so much for allowing us to host this. I want to thank Dave Logsdon for bringing this to my attention. And with that,
Judy made my job a lot easier organizing the event. I just kind of think, okay, Judy, run with it. And this is, we've had a number of different things. In fact, a remarkable one we had was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki exhibit in the far, on this floor, this level in the far corner, which was amazing, which we, Steve and Wayne did a lot of the volunteer work and being there to walk people around, and it was an amazing exhibit. That was just an example. And then on Armistice Day, we're going to be here. We're still planning that, a big program, a 2.5-hour program, maybe 3. And
2 hours down here with you.
yeah. When that thing is
2 hours on the main Portiel. We're going to have a day of peace, and we're hoping to have in the Portiel more peace learning and peace listening. So it's going to be, we're going to have a day of peace from 10 to 12 or 10 to 2.
and there might be some bell ringing in that too.
Absolutely.
Actually. And that's why there's going to be a wonderful organization being planned now for DC. So a number of our folks will be there, but the rest of you who are here would welcome to come here on Armistice Day to reclaim Armistice Day. The second part of the reason that we had the convention on Kellogg-Briand Pack, Wayne Whitman is here presenting.
Presente.
Wayne Whitman wanted it on Kellogg Boulevard in that hotel, and part of that was the 90th anniversary of the signing of the Kellogg-Briand Pack is tomorrow. We initially wanted to have the convention to end tomorrow, but logistically we lost that battle. But anyway, it's a beautiful event. I'm so glad everybody just decided to make this. At 8:45, I was sitting in the lobby of the hotel saying, uh-oh, there could be 5 people and me. So, but I thank you for all showing up. And it's an early morning. We had a late night. Some of us had a real late night. I won't go into that. In this morning's Minneapolis paper, if you get a chance to pick one up somewhere, there's probably something open. You'll see David Cooley on the front pages.
All right, David.
Big article about the VA privatization. Big time for us. Love it. Sunday paper. Thank you, David, for this and all the work you do. And our communications committee for the convention. Jeff is here, and all the people in Sue, the amazing Sue Ann Martinson, who
Sue Ann.
And she's the newest member of Veterans for Peace, associate member. Sue Ann,
Stand up, stand up. There she is.
You know, like in baseball, you sign, the Yankees always sign a big high price free agents. So we're trying to steal Sue. We already stole Penny Gardner from Lamb, and now we're trying to steal Sue Ann from Lamb too. And Lamb. Security, you throw that one. But it does say women against military madness. A lot of times people say, we are doing a great chapter, what's your secret? I go, well, first of all, you got to clone Steve McCune, clone Barry Reich, and hook up with an amazing group of women. And
That's right.
When our partnership with Lamb has been really was what has made us strong. And I hope we've contributed something to you too. Thank you. So when we get closer, are any Lamb people here? Any Lamb people stand up? Before I introduce the guests and have John come up here and sing for you, one of the things that when we were organizing this, I said, because of that Kellogg-Briand thing, Mary Beaudoin is from Lamb, and she will talk about the perspective of women in this Kellogg-Briand thing. Because remember now, Kellogg-Briand was signed by Kellogg and John and all these men in a room in Paris, but the women made the goddamn thing possible. So remember that. So anyway, we've had an amazing convention, and there's a lot of moving parts. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I'm going to introduce Michael Knox from the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation.
All right.
And every year, the last couple of conventions, Michael's been there and presented the Peace Memorial Award, the annual Peace Memorial Award. And I'll let Michael speak of it. Michael.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. What a wonderful group. It's been my third year to present our annual Peace Prize at your meeting. As you know, the U.S. has a culture of war, and if you have the courage to speak out against war, you're often labeled unpatriotic, un-American, even anti-military. And so we want to be sure that we recognize and honor the brave Americans who have the courage to speak out against war.
Yeah.
And that's what the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation is all about. So we do this in three ways. One, we have a publication called the U.S. Peace Registry, where we document what specific anti-war activities people have engaged in. And we try to honor you by saying exactly what you've done. All of you in this room are qualified to be included, so I hope you will go to our webpage, uspeacememorial.org, click on registry, and see how you can list your anti-war actions and your history, basically, in the U.S. Peace Registry, so that everyone can see what you've done, learn from what you've done, and perhaps emulate your activities. So that's our first action. The second is we're raising funds and planning to build a U.S. Peace Memorial as a national monument in Washington, D.C. It will be a place where we can all meet to learn about people who have opposed war and proposed peaceful alternatives to war in the United States, a focal point for our activities. The third activity we are involved in is giving or awarding an annual Peace Prize. And the Peace Prize has been 10 years now that we've done that. Previous recipients, in fact, there may be a couple in this room. Is Ann Wright here?
Yep.
Ann Wright?
Yeah.
Awarded the Peace Prize in 2017 for courageous anti-war activism, inspirational peace leadership, and selfless citizen diplomacy.
Yeah.
In 2016, we're pleased to give the award to Veterans for Peace at your annual conference.
Yeah.
The plaque read in recognition of heroic efforts to expose the causes and costs of war and to prevent and end armed conflict. So, thank you. I heard Medea Benjamin's going to be here. Are you in the audience, Medea?
I think she left.
She left. Well, I have a 2 o'clock meeting with her this afternoon. Guess she's going to be a no-show. But Medea won previously Kathy Kelly in 2015.
Yeah.
Code Bank in 2014, which
Yeah.
of course Medea is co-founder of. Chelsea Manning in 2013.
Yeah.
Noam Chomsky in 2011. Dennis Kucinich in 2010.
Yeah.
And Cindy Sheehan in 2009.
Yeah.
So I'm very pleased to announce today that our 2018 Peace Prize is awarded to the Honorable David Swanson.
Yay!
He stands beside me and receives the award. And it's for his inspiring anti-war leadership, writings, strategies, and organizations which help to create a culture of peace. So I want to thank you, David, for dedicating your life to ending war. You're one of the most prolific writers, speakers, activists, and organizers for peace. The breadth of your work is truly staggering. I have to read this because it's so long. You have enlightened us with your books that are on the forefront of modern anti-war thought, with speeches, debates, conferences, blogs, billboards, radio shows, online courses, videos, websites, more innovative ideas than I can name. Also, he's on your advisory board for Veterans for Peace. And I want you to know, David, that your efforts are appreciated here and around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anti-war leadership, writings, strategies, and organizations help to create a culture of peace. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, our special musical guest, who has been our treasurer of Rest in Peace, and former board member, national board member, and former president of Chapter 27. When Wayne died, he was the treasurer. And all of a sudden, it was like Wayne knew where everything was, what stones everything were put. And Wayne's style of bookkeeping was more like back of the envelope kind of, like I would be the treasurer. And then John said, I'll do it. He volunteered. And anybody who's in Vets for Peace, any organization, people that volunteer for anything is amazing. And John stepped up and he did an important part. And John is native, and every time we went up to Standing Rock, some of us went there a lot. John said, "Yep, bring the tobacco, bring tobacco." He advised us all about the native protocol, which is really important. Because a lot of times people, we charge and here we are, strike up the band, and we needed to be there and respect the protocol of the native tradition, because this is their land, and this is their culture. So we've kind of covered that in this convention, I think. So anyway, John Barone.
All right, John.
North Dakota, the Beaudoin powwow. We are a traditional powwow. Everybody's welcome. Little way to say my name that was given me is Strong Voice by a Dakota holy person, and I know how to say it in Dakota, but I'll butcher it. So I apologize to Chris. I got that name because I fought a city, my hometown, Chaska, which means firstborn son, for 14 years to get the American Legion and the VFW off sacred burial mounds.
Yeah.
And we did it. I got 2 death threats and some other things, but one evening they invited me into a lodge, and there were 25 elders with a bunch of other people, and they put their hand on my chest and on my body and said, "In here is Dakota." My background is French-Canadian Micmac, and I trace that back to the 1800s. So, before I play, I want to read a short note in honor of women. Without them, we lose all knowledge. I add my breath to your breath, that our days may be long on the earth, that the days of our people may be long, that we may be one person, that we may finish our roads together. May our mother bless you with life. May our life paths be fulfilled. Kere India, Laguna. I'm taking a little liberty, and I added one song because with all the stuff that's going on in the United States and the world today, especially the United States with guns, I'm going to sing a song by a friend of mine, Tom Paxton. What if no matter how angry he was, how outraged he was, how furious he was? What if no matter how angry he was, he couldn't lay hands on a gun? He couldn't lay hands on a gun. What if no matter how right he was, how wrong they were, how evil they were? What if no matter how right he was, he couldn't lay hands on a gun? He couldn't lay hands on a gun. No rifle, no shotgun, no pistol in sight, no revolvers, automatics, no assault guns tonight, no clips crammed with bullets anywhere to be found, no weapons just laying around. What if no matter how outraged he was, how furious he was, how murderous he was? What if no matter how outraged he was, he couldn't lay hands on a gun? He couldn't lay hands on a gun. He dug through his Chevy, backseat the trunk, the attic, the basement, piles of old junk, came up empty-handed again and again. Tell me what he would do then. What if no matter how angry he was, how outraged he was, how furious he was? What if no matter how angry he was, he couldn't lay hands on a gun? He couldn't lay hands on a gun.
Yeah.
Okay, now this next one, some have heard me play it before. I Ain't Marchin' Anymore by Phil Oakes back in the 60s. I have declared this the new Veterans for Peace national anthem. Well, I marched to the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British War. The young glass started growing, the young glass started flowing, but I ain't marching anymore. For I killed my share of Indians in 1,000 different fights. I was there at the Little Bitty Horn. I heard many men cry and I saw many more die. It's always the old that lead us to a war, always the young that fall. Just look at all we've won with a saber and a gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers and too many others, but I ain't marching anymore. For I marched to the battle of the German trench, in a war that was bound to end all wars. Oh, I must have killed 1 million men, now they want me back again, but I ain't marching anymore. It's always the old that lead us to a war, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with a saber and a gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I flew the final mission in the Japanese sky, set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw that city burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't marching anymore. No, I ain't marching anymore. Repeat it one time. No,
I ain't marching anymore. Yay!
We'll bring John back at the closing, after the bell ringing. The meat of the program, although we've got some nice tasty appetizers, I would say. When John sang that song at Armistice Day, with our bell ringing at the History Museum. So we were all in like one little corner of the History Museum. They were very nice and nice houses, but the place echoes like crazy. The sound carries. And so you had all these other people going to, who weren't part of our Armistice Day thing, and they were just going to different exhibits. And he sings, he rings that old strong voice, he rings that I Ain't-a-Marchin Anymore. That just reverberated throughout that whole museum. Everybody's like, where's this coming from, That was beautiful, yeah. It's a great song. So, now we get to the meat of the program. I want to introduce you because he doesn't need an introduction because he's already been introduced, basically. David Swanson.
Thrilled to be here. The award was terrific, and we do need that peace monument in D.C. badly. They are putting up a monument now to every war, including the war on terrorism. There are a lot of things around here named for Kellogg, and few people who have any idea why. I think the two biggest names in the news in 1928 were future white supremacist Charles Lindbergh, who did something with an airplane, and Frank Kellogg. And one of those names has lasted a little longer than the other one. Frank Kellogg was a U.S. Secretary of State, and probably the one most worth teaching people about. The list of U.S. Secretaries of State is quite a rogues gallery. There have been presidents like Jefferson and Madison, or almost presidents like William Jennings Bryan, or would have killed to be president like their husband had been in some cases. John Calhoun had a lake in this town named for him that got its Dakota name back this year. I bet a lot of people could accurately tell me whether Daniel Webster was a politician, a celebrity chef, or a whale trainer. George Marshall, Henry Kissinger, John Foster Dulles have a little blood-soaked name recognition. Some will recall Alexander Haig informing everyone he was in charge when Reagan was in the hospital. Some could name maybe the past 20 years worth of hucksters and weapons dealers and thugs that held this office. Depending on your team loyalty, you may take the most pride or shame in Madeleine Albright defending the murder of 500,000 children, or Colin Powell telling the United Nations fairy tales to unsuccessfully legalize a genocide on Iraq. Others have a little name recognition because they were part of this country's very favorite catastrophe ever, World War II. But who has ever heard of Frank Kellogg? Of the 34 regular secretaries of state since there's been a Nobel Peace Prize, 5 have grabbed them. None of those 5 was qualified. The prize is meant to fund the work of war abolitionists, not to honor powerful Western officials who do something right that stands out primarily due to its contrast with the horror of what they usually do. The best you can say for Marshall or Root or Hull getting the prize is that they were not consistently awful. You cannot even say that much about Henry Kissinger. But what about Frank Kellogg? You can walk down Kellogg Boulevard in St. Paul and not find anyone who can tell you who Kellogg was. If Frank Kellogg had launched a major war, he might be better known. And if John McCain were from St. Paul, there would be a monument fund being put together by next week. There's no monument to Frank Kellogg anywhere. But Frank Kellogg is the only Secretary of State with his name on a treaty that bans all war, and the only one buried in a section of the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. dedicated to peace. When people come and visit Charlottesville, where I live, they find everyone, from the local liberals to the visiting Nazis, worshiping at the shrine of Thomas Jefferson. When I come to St. Paul, I do not find the same recognition of Frank Kellogg. It is thanks to the work of Veterans for Peace that anybody has heard of him at all. Wikipedia does not list him as one of the notable persons from St. Paul. The Wikipedia page on the Kellogg-Briand Pack is, however, somewhat less dishonest and dismissive than it was some years back, largely due to the publication of a book called The Internationalists, about which more in a minute. I think the answer to the movement to take down racist war monuments and to rename lakes is, first of all, hell yes. Second of all, unless you can find me somewhere a non-racist war monument, this means the war monuments are all coming down. And third of all, we need monuments to movements and moments and causes and accomplishments and principles, not to individuals. Individuals are always flawed, always participate in some of the popular outrages of their time and place. So I would rather celebrate the Kellogg-Briand Pact and the movement that compelled Kellogg to create it, and the good it has done the world, and the good it could yet do the world. I'd rather not celebrate Frank Kellogg as a hero or a deity, but he is the connection that the Twin Cities have to the Peace Pact. And if we must celebrate individuals and identify cities with individuals, he should be bumped up to the top of the list as a symbol of peacemaking. The real Frank Kellogg was, like every other human being, quite a mixed bag. While U.S. culture frequently employs the word democracy, it has never remotely had such a thing. Rather, it has had governments made up of people who want power. Back in Kellogg's day, a movement to require a public vote before the United States could fight a war was stopped by powerful people in the U.S. government, which at its best has been partially representative. But in Kellogg's day, and I mean the 1920s, when Kellogg was in his 60s, the U.S. government was in some ways more representative than it is now. Not of racial or religious or ethnic minorities, not of children, but women could duly vote, and bribery was still treated more as a crime than as a public service. The military-industrial complex, as we have come to know and be ruled by it, hardly existed. Corporations did not yet have full human rights. Peace was not associated with treason or with recklessness, but if anything, with rejecting the backward war-making of the Europeans. Business interests, including those of farmers, favored peace. The mass media cartel and its propaganda skills, while dramatically advanced during World War I, were nothing like what they would become. Most importantly, and in part because of these other factors, there was in the 1920s a peace movement, the likes of which we have not seen since. It was not huge like in the 1960s. It was closer to all-encompassing. It had the 4 biggest political parties in the country backing the criminalization of war, including the socialists and the progressives, 5 with the Minnesota Farmer Labor Party. It was led not by college students, but by university professors and bankers and lawyers. The outlawry movement, the drive to outlaw war, was backed by the National League of Women Voters, the Young Women's Christian Association, the National Association of Parents and Teachers, the group meeting down the street called the American Legion, the Federal Council of Churches of Christ, the Methodists, the Baptists. If you can find an organization that existed in the 1920s, it is very likely on record for banning war and has almost certainly never retracted that position, but simply forgotten it. The peace movement of the 1920s was not created by a draft. It was not created by selfish appeals to people's financial interests. It did not succeed by outdoing the warmongers in its devotion to flags and troops. It was an explicitly moralistic movement opposed to the mass killing of foreign and American soldiers alike. And it took hold of Frank Kellogg, and it flipped him upside down, shook him 5 times, set him on his feet, kicked him in the pants, and won him a Nobel Peace Prize, for which he never thanked anyone beyond the portly, one-eyed, hot-tempered drunk that he saw in the mirror. The drama that I covered in my book, The World Outlawed War, with some anti-corporate credentials. He was a Republican lawyer who had busted up monopolies for Teddy Roosevelt, including General Paper Company, Union Pacific Railroad, and Standard Oil. If Frank Kellogg had been a foreign ruler a generation later, the CIA would have overthrown him. But in the early 20th century, one could talk about economic matters and never mention the military and make perfect sense. Today, everybody does that and nobody makes any sense at all. It is crazier than having an elephant on this stage and never mentioning it. This week, a friend of mine, Sam Husseini, the same guy who was tossed out of Trump and Putin's press conference because he might have asked a question about nuclear weapons, asked me what question he should ask Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I recommended this question. Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Ilhan Omar, all likely to be in Congress in January, have proposed slashing military spending to pay for human and environmental needs. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Sam asked Elizabeth Warren a variation on that, and she uttered a bunch of words that amounted to a flat refusal to answer the question. And she was speaking at her event announcing her big new plan to supposedly fight corruption. In a far less militarized era, Frank Kellogg was an Elizabeth Warren. As a senator from 1917 to 1923, he backed or generally failed to oppose a world war, U.S. military actions in Russia, Panama, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Mexico, Honduras, Yugoslavia, Guatemala, Turkey, China, and West Virginia. He backed one resolution suggesting that U.S. troops be withdrawn from Russia, quote, as soon as possible. He backed free passage for U.S. ships through the Panama Canal. He ultimately opposed the League of Nations. As Secretary of State, Kellogg threatened Mexico with war if it tried to profit